joining. We'll get started now. So this month's Campfire session, we're covering off the sprint board. So before we get to the agenda, my name is Omar. I'm part of the customer success team here at Paprika. You may know me from a lot of the customer support and customer success activities that we have. Yeah, that's me. Moving on to the agenda. So today we'll be covering off one of the new features within Mission Control, which is the sprint board, which came out with the most recent release in Feb this month. So the sprint board is a feature that allows you to facilitate running Agile projects all within Mission Control. So we'll be covering off how you can conduct your Agile sprint planning. The sprint board, that's the main component that you use when you plan out your sprints. We'll also discuss what sprint teams are, how you can set them up, and how they can be used. We'll also cover off how you can move items from your backlog onto different sprints that you have. And then as you go through the sprint, as you work through it, we'll see how the different analytics will display some helpful information there. Yep, so those are the different areas we'll cover off. So sprints in Mission Control are based around the milestone object. So an individual milestone serves as an individual sprint. And with the child actions for that sprint milestone serving as the items that you want to deliver within that sprint. Along with that, so you have a way to identify a milestone as being a sprint. And then you also have a milestone that you can identify as a backlog. And you can identify multiple milestones as backlog. So for example, you could have a milestone that is just backlog, and then you might have a priority backlog. So any high priority items, you probably put it in there. And then you can then move stuff around to the relevant sprint. So there's ways for you to identify a milestone as either a sprint or a backlog or just a regular milestone. So we'll cover that off as well. That's what's on the agenda. Before we jump into the demo, I'd like to keep this as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, please put them through on the chat or the Q&A. Just let me know, and I'll try and answer them as I go along. All right, so I'll just stop my screen sharing for a second. If there's any audio issues, any visual issues, just let me know. Yeah. All right, so I'll just stop sharing and then I'll switch on over to the browser and then we'll jump into the demo. All right, so let's start over here. So I've got a project set up here that will basically be running based on Agile methodology. And what I've done here is I've created a few different milestones that are considered backlog, some that are considered sprints, and I've also created one milestone that is just a general catch-all milestone. So you'll see, we'll go through each one of these here. So the PM, the admin, whoever's managing this project here. So just to back up a little bit. So this project will be conducting a mission control implementation. So we'll go through all the steps in terms of setting mission control up for a client. So that includes, setting up the control pad, setting up the project templates, setting up the different filters and settings for the different components, setting up holidays and so on. So there's quite a few different items that we've added in under the backlog milestone that need to be assigned out to the different sprints. And then we'll go through that in a second. But for the PM that's managing this project, we've created some catch-all actions, so like PM admin, so any work in terms of moving stuff around, assigning resources, that PM can go in and add hours to that action. And then I've also added an action for a stand-up meeting. So we're conducting these weekly, so might want to log time to that, or rather than individual items within the backlog or sprint. So I've got those two actions there, and then I've set the start and end date based on the start and end of the last sprint, or what I would expect it to be the last date of the last sprint. So that's how I've set up the admin or catch-all action. So if I just close that out, then I've got the next milestone, which is backlog. And within it, I've identified all of the items that I want to deliver as part of this mission control implementation. So things like training, creating holiday allowances, roles, teams, data migration, training, setting up stuff like the retro board, scheduler, timesheet settings, and so on. So there's quite a few things for me to work through, and what I'm going to break that down into sprints. And what I've done that I've created sprint milestones. So I've got sprint 1, sprint 2, and sprint 3, and my sprint duration is going to be 2 weeks. And I'll walk through how you can identify that. So to identify a milestone as being a backlog or a sprint, there's a few fields that we've added in. So if I just open up a backlog and a sprint milestone, and I've created this section on my page layout called milestone sprint settings. So you may want to update your page layouts if you're interested in using this feature. So you want to make sure your fields are added in. So that's the sprint start date, sprint end date, sprint capacity, and then exclude from sprint existing allocation. Along with that, you also want to add in the backlog as well as the exclude from sprint existing allocation indicator. So these are the new fields that we've added in for this feature specifically. And so if it's a backlog milestone, you want to make sure the backlog milestone is set to true. And what this will allow you to do is basically select this as one of the milestones for you to move items from the backlog onto your sprints. This will make more sense once we get to the sprint board. But this is that initial setup that you want to make sure is completed. If I go on to one of these sprint milestones here and just scroll down. So I've got the milestone sprint settings here. I've got the sprint checkbox checked, and well, backlog is unchecked. I've got a start and end date set up, and then I've got a sprint capacity. So this is optional. You don't need to specify it, but I've said that I plan on doing 30 hours of work in the sprint. And then based on that, I can then assign the actions accordingly. And lastly, you have your exclude from sprint existing allocation. Again, this will also make more sense once we get to the component that references the existing allocations. But this basically allows you to exclude a milestone or action or a project from being accounted for in the existing allocation section. So this wouldn't apply to this specific milestone itself, but for example, you're working on other projects and you don't want the hours from that project to be accounted for in the existing allocations, then you would go to that project and you would set that to true. And then it rolls down, so whatever level you do that on, so whether that's a project or the milestone, and then obviously the action itself, it will roll down to the action records for that. So that's the sprint fields that you want to make sure that they're set up. In terms of setting up the sprint itself, if you go into the, so this is one more tab that I have added in using the Lightning App Builder. So you'll also want to add it here. So if I go into edit page from the top here, I've just added in a new sprint tab there, and then I have just searched for the sprint board component and dragged and dropped it onto the page here. So this usually takes some time to load up, but the idea is whatever component that you find, the sprint board, just drag it onto the page over here like that. And then I'm currently using a 2-column layout over here. If you feel you need more space here, you can choose to create a new Lightning record page and then use that instead, so the sprint board itself takes up the whole page instead of 2/3 of the page like I have here. Looks like it's going to take some more time to load up, but we'll leave that open. Oh, there we go. So if I just look up the sprint board, yep, there it is. So this is the component that you want to drag and drop over here. I've already got that there. But yeah, that's the component. And then once you save that, activate it, make sure your users can see it, and then back out of here. So this is a sprint that I've already set up that's already in progress, in motion. And so I'll see all of these sections filled out here. Whereas if it were a new sprint that you were starting off, you won't see all of these sections here. You would only just see the stop section here that you want to make sure it is a sprint or not. You want to specify the start and end date, and then optionally the capacity. And once you do that, it's going to start displaying the rest of the sections. So we'll go through an example of what it looks like already set up, and then we'll go through an example where we set up all of those things step by step. So ideally, when you come onto the milestone sprint page, you want to make sure this is checked. You specify the start and end dates, you specify the capacity, make sure you click save. Going on, you'll have all these sections here that you can use over here. So you've got your capacity charts, and capacities are broken down as a total, broken down based on the functions of the roles that are within the sprint team. So for example, I have added 3 people in here. So I've got Victor, Chris, and myself. And our function from the role record is consultant and developer. So it's breaking down the capacity across those 2 functions. And then if you hover over them, it'll provide more details on how much of that has been allocated to the sprint, the current sprint, based on the actions assigned within it, as well as the remaining capacity. So in this case, Victor, who's a consultant, he's actually assigned more than what is available. And so that's why it's coming up as a negative here. And then it also breaks it down by individual roles. So I've got those 3 roles there, and then their individual capacities, what they have capacity for, as well as what has been allocated within this current sprint. So that's a quick way for you to identify maybe someone's bottleneck. You need to move stuff around to someone else. You can have a quick look at the charts here to identify that. Moving on to the next section, which is sprint team. So this is where you go in and create a group of people that you'll be assigning to these items within the sprint. So I've got these 3 people here, Victor, Chris, and myself. It's pulling in their functions. It's also accounting for their sprint capacity. So the sprint capacity is calculated based on what is based on your availability. So that accounts for the availability on your role record as well as the role availability records. And it also accounts for holidays. It also accounts for existing allocations, so other projects that you might be involved with. So it takes all of that into account and then figures out what you have remaining, and it provides you with what's available to assign within the sprint. And then you have your sprint allocation. So what is assigned within the sprint? So I've got a few action items that have been assigned within the sprint to these people. And as you add more or remove some, these figures will update automatically. And then your remaining capacity is just the difference between the 2. So then you can determine if there's a certain amount of hours that you want to keep this person available for other projects, you can have a quick look at these figures here. If you want to remove someone, maybe they're not available, they don't have the capacity, you can remove them using the delete button here. If you want to add someone in, you can use the add row button here to add them in. Just look their name up, and then it will automatically calculate all of the figures for you. So, and then this will also update the charts here accordingly. So I'll just remove that. You can also load roles. So there's 2 ways you can load roles. You can load from an existing team. So if you've created a team before, and you can just copy over the roles from there. So if I just select that team, if I were to load, everyone from that team would be pulled in. So if I do that, there's a few more roles that have been pulled in. So I'll just remove this placeholder. And yeah, so I've got those 2 more roles in there. I can also load roles from another sprint. So I haven't run any other sprints right now. This is the only sprint that I have, but I'll show an example of this on the next sprint that we create. So you can, if you're familiar with a few people working on a sprint for a project, and you know they worked well, you can create a team for them, and then you can easily pull them in by selecting a sprint. And for a group of people that you've selected or added over here, you can create a team for them, which is what I've done for the 3 people here. So just give it a name, and then it will automatically create the team assignments for you. So I will show you what that looks like here. So Aprika Machine Control Implementation Sprint Team. If I go to the related, I've got Victor, Chris, and myself as team members there. There is also in place a sprint team record that gets created for the individual users, and that gets referenced here. So if I just refresh my page, just undo some of those changes. Go back down. Okay, so that is the sprint team section. So make sure any changes you make sure to click save after that. Then you've got your existing allocation section. So the existing allocation section will show you, again, what are all the people that you've added in as roles. And then it will also pull in their allocations from outside of this project. So maybe they're working on other projects. You want to review what their allocation is based on their, and then you want to determine how much of that has been assigned to them. And based on their allocation, you want to determine if it's something you want to assign over here. Maybe you can swap out this person to someone else. Maybe some high priority work they're working on, so you don't want to disturb them. You can assign someone else based on that. To see what those allocation figures are summing up from, you can expand all of them using the expand all, collapse all buttons at the top here, or you can do that individually. So for Victor, he's assigned to the Ripcore machine control project, he's assigned to the Ripcore website development project, and the total allocations for both of those projects are 51 and 8 respectively, and that's breaking it down by the weeks, and those weeks are basically the start and end time frame for the sprint itself. It also accounts for holidays and events. So Victor, he has got a few holidays in week 1 and week 2. And similarly, Chris here, he doesn't have holidays, but he does have some events. So those figures are being accounted for in this section. So there was a field that I mentioned earlier, the exclude from existing allocations. So maybe this project here, Ripcore website development, is not something I want to include in the existing allocations for a sprint. I can go to this project or the milestone or its actions, and whatever level I want to exclude, I can set the exclude from sprint allocation. So this field on that specific project milestone or action. And then those figures won't be accounted for in this section here. So those are the existing allocation figures. And again, as you start, this is as you make updates throughout the page over here and outside of it as well, and you refresh your page over here, those figures will be reflected. Okay, moving on to the last section, which is sprint allocation. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the backlog section, and on the right-hand side, you'll see the sprint, the current sprint. So you've got your backlog already selected because I had set the backlog checkbox to true. If you have multiple backlogs, for example, like a backlog milestone and a backlog priority milestone, it won't pre-select it. It'll just allow you to look up and then select whichever one is applicable. And then you just click go from there. So you'll see all of your action items there. So you're seeing the action ID, it's hyperlinked, so you can open it up in a new tab to see more details. You've got your action name and then the total hours scheduled. So this is just outlining how many actions there are in your backlog. This is outlining the total amount of hours scheduled and then for each individual item. So you can drag and drop items from here onto the sprint. And as you'll see, the numbers over here have been updated as well. As you'll see that I've actually got a placeholder consultant. So that's someone that isn't part of the sprint team over here. And you'll see now that it has unassigned actions there. So this just lets me know that there's work that has been added to the sprint, but it's not been assigned to someone else. So, and it's 2 hours of work. So I can then review what their capacity looks like, and then I can assign it to the appropriate person accordingly. Yep. So, and if there's something you don't want to add, remove from the sprint, maybe they're overburdened, so you can just drag it back to the backlog. If there's multiple records that you want to pull in, so just select the ones that you want, and then select one of the selected records, and then just drag them in. You'll see all of those records pull through. So just remove those, bring them back here. So you've got your actions, you've got your action name, you've got your hour scheduled billable and hour scheduled non-billable. So this is just based on whatever was set up on the original actions. You can just update the figures here if you want. You've got your action owners, so you can update those accordingly. And then you've also got your resource assignment wizard. So this is your standard resource assignment wizard. It's going to pull in the component itself and calculate the roles availability, and then you can find resources accordingly. So if I were to find someone based on some search filters that I've done, it will let me know their individual capacity by the day if I want to. So for example, myself here, I've got 2 holidays there, I've got some event there, but I am available on these 3 days, so it's fine. I can probably work on this in the first 3 days of this week. So looks like that's fine by me. And then I've also got the resource, the checklist item manager. So again, it's the same tool as before. You're able to create checklist items, manage them, manage existing ones, and delete them. Yeah, so that's your checklist item manager. Yeah, so once you've made your changes, make sure to click save. This just indicates that you've got unsafe changes in there. Yeah, so we'll just refresh the page one more time. Go back to sprint. One more thing to know here is the sprint start and end date. So if you have a start and end date specified here, and any action that you add to the sprint, it will automatically update to set these at the start and end date on the action itself. So if I were to go to this action here, I expect it to have the same dates as what I had set over here, 10th Feb to 21st Feb. So 10th Feb to 21st Feb. There you go. Yep, so moving on to the next tab here within the sprint tab. So this is the planning board, moving on to the whiteboard. So the whiteboard will be filtered to the existing actions within this sprint. So I've got these actions here. Those are complete. This one is just in progress. I've got about 12 and a half hours done out of 20. So it's probably something I want to wrap up because the end date is coming up tomorrow. So I probably want to look at finishing this up soon. So again, it's the standard whiteboard. You can apply all of your changes that you do normally. You can customize it accordingly. So maybe you want to see grouped by action owners, and you've got a few different options there as well. And then you can apply some other changes as well in terms of like what the summary fields are. You can apply filters. You can use the collapse and expand all buttons, and then update the settings here. Moving on to the next tab, which is the checklist board. So the checklist board, again, very similar to the whiteboard. It will show you checklist items for the actions of the current sprint that you're viewing. So sprint 1 here, I've only got one checklist item there, and that's complete. So again, you can move stuff around, drag and drop. If this is an easier interface to work with, you can easily log time from here as well as the whiteboard. Yeah. So those are your Kanban views for the actions and checklist items. So you've also got a Kanban view for the retrospective. So if you want to conduct your retrospective, so as you're working through the sprint, you find things that you're learning. You can also use the retro board to log those learnings, basically. So any learning that relates to the retrospective that relates to this milestone here, that will be shown over here. So I've got a few learnings in here around setting up templates in Excel, what worked well. So it's probably something I might want to review next time around when I'm doing something similar. Similarly, Chris has added in something around custom settings, so that's probably something he wants to try next. So this is a good way for you to, stay on top of your implementation or whatever projects that you're working on. It's a good way to keep track of your learnings and, try that next time around. Moving on to the next tab, which is the sprint analytics. And just a reminder, each one of these tabs has been covered separately in previous sessions, so I'd recommend checking those out if you have any questions on that. Okay, so the sprint analytics section. So we've got we've got a burn-down chart, pretty straightforward. It shows you the ideal hours based on the start and end date of the sprint, and then the time logs that people have submitted. So it looks like I've still got that one action that I've got to wrap up by tomorrow. And then you've also got your velocity charts here. So your completed actions within the sprint, what the total amount, and as well as how many you've completed so far, and the remaining. You've also got hours by time log type. If your users are, if you'd like users to make sure that time log type is being populated, you want to make sure that's add in a validation rule or make it required in the page layout. But once you do that, you'll start seeing those figures, those numbers increase over here. You'll see what types people are using, and then you can sort of have a general idea of how much work is going towards, for example, admin work or compared to implementation work. And then you can decide why that is the case, if there's any improvements that can be made, any efficiencies that can be applied. Then you've got your total hours charts over here. So total hours in general. So over the milestone, the sprint milestone itself. So there's 30 hours that we had scheduled, and then there's 22.5 hours have been completed. And then this is just the total hours by the functions. So 26 hours have been assigned to people that have a function of developer. 19 have been completed by those developers. And then over here, we've got 4 hours have been assigned to people with a function of consultant. And then 3.5 hours have been completed by people of function consultant. And then you've got it broken down by individual people that are part of the sprint team. So Chris, myself, and Victor there. So those are the different charts that you have. And that's what what it would look like once you've started filling out all the details. The next and the last thing that I want to cover off is creating a new sprint. And building it out, basically. So if I go back to the project here, And before I cover that off, I'd like to show one more thing here. So if I'm on the project page here, I can access the Create Milestones page, and I can use that to quickly build out all of the sprint milestones, all of the backlog milestones, any admin milestones that I want to add in. I can do that directly from this page. And what I've done is I've actually updated the field set, create milestones on the milestone object. And I've added in the relevant fields. So I didn't just update the page layout, I also updated the field set. So I'm able to quickly make these updates from here if I want to. So I can specify if this is a backlog milestone, what the sprint, if it's a sprint milestone, what the capacity and the start and end dates look like. So this is probably possibly something you might want to look into applying as well if it's something you use frequently. So back out here, we'll go to the next sprint. So this one doesn't have any actions. We'll start assigning actions from the backlog onto this one, and then we'll see all of those figures start populating in terms of hours scheduled, hours completed as you start logging time. So click into the sprint here. I won't update it from here. I'll actually update it from the sprint tab here. So if I go into the sprint, I will specify that this is actually a sprint. I will set a start date. So this one, the previous one ended on 21st or ends on 21st. So I'll set that to the 24th and then ends on the 7th. So two weeks sprint timeline. So I want to make sure the sprint capacity is doesn't go over 30 hours, and then save. So now that I've saved that, now I've got a few different sections here that we saw earlier, but all of them are blank because I haven't assigned any work. I haven't added any sprint teams. So I'll go ahead and quickly do that. So I will actually, I won't actually manually add them in. I will use the load function. So load roles, I'll go to sprint and I've selected or pre-selected the project, and then I'll just select the first sprint that I had. So when I do that, it's going to pull in all of the people that were there as part of that sprint. So I can see that they do have some capacity available here. So that's good. And then I can start assigning work to these guys here. So I'll make sure to save that. And then I will go ahead and check to see if they're assigned to any other work. So Victor's assigned to some EVGA work, that's fine. Yep, everything looks good there. So I can go ahead and start assigning work to them. Again, I've got the backlog selected, but if you've got multiple, you can swap out this backlog for the other backlog. And then I'll start assigning works here. So key thing for me to keep in mind is make sure the capacity does not go over 30 hours. So I will assign work from here accordingly. So we've got to make sure roles are created, teams are created, holiday allowances are created. Got to set up the filters there, and we'll set up, maybe we'll do the data migration as well. So that comes up to, I think, 31 hours, 29 hours actually. Okay, so we've got one more hour that we can assign, so we can go ahead and add that in. So I'm looking at the figures over here to see what the what has been assigned total, and that looks good to me. I can go ahead and save that, and if I go up on the charts here, I'll see that all of the people are there, but it's still unassigned. So that's something once I start assigning it to people, that's when it's going to do that. So I will go ahead and set this create roles for myself. And we'll give this one to Victor. And who has the, okay. I will actually also I'll assign this to Chris, and I will assign this to myself. Actually, the other way around, so Chris, and then I will put this for myself. So if I now go up here, I'll see that all of those figures have been updated here, and for myself, I'm actually very close to being pretty much fully assigned to work. All of my capacity has been assigned over here. So if that's something I want to reduce because I've got other projects to be working on or some new projects that might come up, I can review the information here and then make that decision. So I might want to assign this out to somebody else. So Chris actually has about 55 hours for this for the 2 week time frame. I might swap that out for him. And I go back and have a look at the figures there. So that looks good to me. I can save that. So that has updated all the figures there. And now people will just go in, start loading time, and then we'll see all of these figures update in the sprint analytics as well. You can use the different tabs to make any other updates. So, for example, I come in here, I start working on the create roles. I can log time to it directly here. So I have actually done, we had actually scheduled 4 hours there. I'll go ahead and set this to, let's say I was able to get that done within 3.5 hours, and I was able to complete it. So I've just logged that time there. And if I were to then go on to like Sprint Analytics, I'll start seeing those figures updating over here. Yeah, so that is the Sprint board. Any questions? If you have any questions, try putting them in the Q&A or the chat, whichever one works. So hopefully this new Sprint board allows for more flexibility in running projects in a different methodology compared to waterfall. So you've got your Agile methodology covered here as well with the Sprint board. Yeah, so if there are no questions, you can and if you do come up with questions later on, you can reach out to us at support@aprika.com or go to our website aprika.com/support. Again, we've got a lot of detailed documentation, training videos, and so on. So make sure to check out those resources as well. And yeah, if you have any ideas on other topics you'd like for us to cover off in these campfire sessions, let us know. Yeah, that's all from me. And we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.